Estamos totalmente de acuerdo con el departamento. Back to English. So, we have more or less a consensus then. More or less. Well, imagine. So, let's let's review at this table. What is number one and number two that you'll be working on? In the working group, you mean? Yes. Data access. Okay. And resiliency was the other. So we have resiliency or resilience, which is discussed by everyone, and we also have data access. So I ask you, that access to data, what does that mean? What would the work entail? Estaba simplemente preguntando cómo tener acceso a información en las áreas que requieren más esfuerzo para tener una fuerza laboral orientada, digamos, por ejemplo, si yo quiero alcanzar un área en la cual yo sé que hay necesidad de sistemas fotovoltaicos, por ende, back to Spanish, back to English, we know that that word has problems specifically, and I can go directly to that. That's why I was asking whether those statistical data was available in order to be able to address, back to Spanish, lidiar con esa área que tiene más necesidades que otras. Oh, back to English. Maybe San Juan is saturated. I can move to Orocovis or Adjuntas or who knows, Utuado. That's what I mean. If I'm able to determine by area where the highest needs and most impact and how I can work in those areas, yeah? Ella está buscando una manera diferente de poder acceder a los datos estadísticos, porque nosotros tenemos algunas fuentes, pero sabemos que los clientes no entienden esos datos. Estamos buscando que se provean esos datos de una in a more digestible way for the public. Great, excellent, good. Here's the data. This table, if you could tell us about your subject and what we should be working on as task groups. And don't be shy. Hello, hello. I'm highly interested in data information. I quote. This is a very necessary component of why, because we're not only going to be working with identification of the most vulnerable zones and also with the demographic and socioeconomic changes that the island has been impacted by in the area of consumption or use. And that has represented because I make a living doing sociodemographic studies, so I feel like a fish out of water, but if I seem to have found a niche with all of you in which I can contribute to all components to be able to be supplied from that importance. I'm quoting all this because nowadays as a consumer, if I want to get my hands on some data or I'd like to know about a particular bill at the Electric Power Authority, for me to be able to know or read some things, but not everyone knows how to read those bills or know what they'll be facing with the new changes and the new energy policy. And to me, that's very important. So I'm going to include myself on the list to see how I can contribute and thereby create a mechanism by which we're able to record. This is not from right here from the office, right? This is field work. The work that needs to be continued because this has to move forward in that way so that it can get to the IT where it needs to go, I believe. I quote, in the case that I'm evaluating, reliability, well, we're studying into the possibility of putting together a microgrid for our main communications headquarters, which is the most critical infrastructure during the hurricane for us. We're about to be in a full power outage knockout during the time in which we were incommunicado given the Hurricane Maria's effects. So there's a series of, let's call them inconveniences or lack of information or situations which don't help us to make decisions, for which we need to create a business case. And to build a worthy business case, for example, I'd like to have machines that are on standby. I'd like to have continuous duty machines. That's a larger expense. But certainly a continuous duty machine that I'm going to be activated 1 hour a month, then there's no business case. So the issue would be if I go to generate the full time and disconnect from the electric power authority, but I need the authority because then that would serve as my backup. So, there's a series of relationships that need to be gleaned, and then it would be good to define what those parameters are. Good afternoon, Luis Marin once again. There's a case running right now that it would be very interesting for you to access, which is the case of one of the Puerto Rico banking interest data center that will become operational this Christmas. And we could grant access for your case study not to be too difficult to achieve. And there could be a case study that's been worked on since the hurricane and is coming to fruition this quarter. So there's more than one, rather, in fact. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, that one. Yeah. Yeah, you're close. You're getting warm. Apparently, somebody's making suggestions to what banking institution. We were also discussing the possibility of creating a discussion group oriented to what he was talking about, to work on the definition of the business rules in order to endeavor in these types of, call them energy co-producers, which alludes a way to explain the business case to the private sector. So we can incentivize co-production and the shared space of those microgrids. Well, there's the rates aspects. Currently, we're thinking about operational and planning aspects, which is a very important aspect as well. We should also evaluate how grid codes, how we can obtain rules for the services that those mini grids can give to the utilities grid, and they don't have to be mini grids. We also need grids for energy efficiency, for demand response. So there's some rate issues for which there are proceedings, but there also have to be a set of rules for the utility to be able to incorporate into their distribution planning so that they can use these resources so that the utility doesn't have to provide those services, because that service can be provided by another party, a developer, a third party. Yeah. So we have quite some common ground there. At this table, anyone else? I think that we're following along the same lines. Although here we are divided from here and there, right? From here and there, except for Tomas, who played hooky and he's not here. But before getting to that point of determining the utility's needs, so that we in turn can create the business case of how we can help us to those needs, I don't know if that lies. I don't know how to translate location value in Spanish. How to give value. Let's say that Claro already has a system. What value does that bring to the utility in this case? Yep, precisely that. Indeed. Very good. Very good. Perfect. Let's now go to table 3. Hello. For us, the most important point regarding these guiding principles, we went with data. Because despite there being different data points, because we speak on behalf of the utility, and and they speak from the other point of view. But for both parties, data is very important for the utility to obtain all the information about distribution, that it be digital and that it be updated, what's existent, especially post Maria, when we were talking about what percentage reliability is to be found in GIS. I don't even dare to even give my opinion of what would be reliable there. For us, it's important on the one hand, and in turn, developers and all those who work in the industry also find access to be very important to the necessary data to be able to develop their projects and make their decisions. Therefore, everything else we understand that has to stem from dependable and complete data in order to do hosting capacity studies, and developers in turn can make their decisions and to be able to work and plan in order to achieve resilience, reliability, safety, and everything else. We have to begin by updating and having complete and dependable data. I would like to add, along the same lines, my understanding is that everything stems from data. Yeah, because for anything that we're going to work in terms of planning, for example, forecasts, I need to know what's happening, not only from the utility standpoint, but also at some point, I will need to know what's happening behind each meter in terms of what is known as prosumers. Because currently, we don't have information regarding the behavior of the different generation systems, and that's a very important matter because at the end of the day, if something happens to that system, who has to take charge of that customer continues to be the utilities wherewithal. If something happens with a generator, I have to handle that load. I have to prepare to handle that load. So definitely, knowledge, just like any is both ways, be it for project proposals as well as for system planning, whatever, all of it. Also, in the case that's mentioned by the interconnection, that goes beyond interconnection. It goes to quality studies to end with to have better end user databases would help us a lot at technical analyses at the substation level, or also technical losses and not technical losses such as theft. And this transcends because that also, as I mentioned before, helps us in great design studies. So in fact, the platform from which we go anywhere else begins with good data. Unfortunately, comments away from the microphone could not be heard by this humble interpreter to be interpreted. An answer is you took generation out as if it's something else when you started your sentence. I'm not sure if you refer to me speaking only about the substations, and well, you gave us the impression that the utility is transmission and distribution and generation will no longer be the authority's hands, or will it be? I mean, will it stop being? Well, currently, that's where we're at, yeah. Okay. Well, that would change my position in the sense that if you no longer have generation, then my business case is much more valid because I can be more useful to the network if you don't have generation and generation has problems. Well, to understand, where was it understood? At the beginning, precisely the beginning. Man, I think that goes to what Maestro was talking about, locational value. Perhaps there's a part within a circuit node where generation would be pretty valuable, and that has to be seen in these rules, right? Right? So, anyone else at the table, please? For the moment, the utility still has generation. Okay? We don't know until when, okay? But for now, we're generation, transmission, and distribution. Given that it's not within our charter of discussion, I need to clarify something I said about the data, because When I say we, I mean the utility. We need cooperation from these projects developers because to date, Glado, oh, not Glado, of course, we we look like a utility that doesn't have its data up to date. That's true. But how many projects are out on the street connected that the authority knows nothing about, especially post Maria? Currently, if we would try to compile all the data, we don't know. We don't know how many folks and what capacities nor where they're at. We just have no notion. Given there was an executive order that allowed it, well, everyone connected without reporting to the authority. And they continue. I know. We know. So there's talk about the authority, PREPA not having data, but developers ask for us to give them information, but they are the first who are not giving us information in order to uphold our updated information. Another benefit of smart metering, when we deployed the pilot project, we have 20,000, and we did deployments by housing development, at vereda, pradera, and in those developments, whenever the smart meters were installed, we caught people who hadn't reported their solar panel installations. So, smart meters talk. That's why they call them smart. Excellent. Just tell everyone to give all the federal funds for smart meters and we'll be done. Great observation. I wanted to share with the whole group that my experience has been in the last 10, 12 months, and it sustains that access to data is of paramount importance. Many of the folks who approach us for energy projects are folks who are looking for resiliency, reliability, because they don't see it from our vantage at the utility. And that lack of data, the general public comes and asks, just as the gentleman who's here commenting, they ask for energy projects because they don't see that resiliency may come from us. And that opens a market that we don't want as energy professionals. I tell you that amongst one of the 5 options, you have to have the grid. Otherwise, it won't be, any system will not be totally resilient, or it will be extremely costly because it would have to provide for redundancies and availability and operational maintenance. And projects have been submitted of that magnitude, and they almost flew, but given that there's other monetary injections that allow them to have more equipment and machinery, but that is an individual benefit because it's almost island mode. It's almost off-grid island mode. But it's not our north. The north of resiliency is the entire grid, right? Even if it's all 8 microgrids. I have a very personal comment to make because I've had my photovoltaic system since prior Maria, 2 years before. I didn't have batteries simply because I didn't think it was necessary. Simply, the grid is my battery. See? And to be fair, I tell you that experience would tell you that my system is limited to 5 kilos, and when I turn on 5 or 6 appliances, it trips the system. Not the same. That happened to when the conference was given. They said something about spending $5,000 a month from the grid. One thing is doing what he says. The cost of batteries is expensive in order to be able to uphold the needs. Sure, correct. And when we talk about batteries, it's expensive for us too. Oh yeah, it's expensive for everybody. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, agreed. Perhaps we should think about the functionality that's being acquired. You're acquiring stability. Perhaps we're not acquiring a battery, nor are we acquiring the demand response aggregators. It's stability, right? That's how one could articulate it better, because people think about batteries and they think about people who want batteries in photovoltaic, but what you need is stability. However, we can get it. Well, okay. What I was going to say was my very personal opinion, which is where I think I might, commit a cardinal sin. $3, $4. $4 is not the price that dependability costs. Like you say, it should be part of a full blown strategy. I mean, I have batteries, but I'm still in the same situation. Yeah, you're in the system, you're using the grid, and then at the end of the day, which pays $4. Well, the issue is that I have surplus, so I don't even pay the $4. Got it. I hear by osmosis, I think. Engineer Gerardo cost me for the record. I didn't understand the instructions too well. My understanding is that it was to select individually the subject matters you had interest in. Yeah, what you're interested in working on, and the one that you think is relevant for Puerto Rico, both. Okay, got it. Relevant, I understand to be planning and coordination, which is the point in which we already have data, you have the important information, and we're, going at a good click. The one that's called safety, security, and reliability is also very important, but when we talk about reliability and resiliency as a result of everything else, once you achieve the goals, my understanding. So, the subjects of interest would be customer engagement and empowerment, as well as planning coordination. Those are the two that I'm most interested in. Thank you very much. Others? Good? Are we good? Is there anyone? Go into Spanish. PJ, como miembro de los grupos de trabajo, ¿qué te parece tanto relevante para que nosotros abordemos el problema y cuál te interesa a ti? Yes, by all means. In my role as chair of the Solar Industries and Storage Association, without this industry, we're not going to have any more systems, because it's the members who sell and install and all of that. So I would like to be part of a task group, and what I can do is to get industry input as far as their concerns and what they can offer, and to serve as a channel for the groups. For example, one of our members is Tesla, and I'm in touch with their public policy manager, so once in a while I could ask, what does Tesla think about this concept that we're discussing? And I can represent the industry's point of view wherever I work. What we're looking for is also commitment, because this will take perhaps until the end of the year, and we're planning for 2 monthly meetings. By a show of hands, how many are interested in committing at that degree? Twice a month to get your input. Great? Fantastic. Great. Very well. Apparently, the interpreter can't see what's causing laughter in the room. If that is the case, great. Something that we're going to do is, please, I need everyone to have included your email address. What we're going to do is we'll be in contact with all of you. In accord with what we've heard from you, we are going to identify 3 or 4 task groups in order to begin recruitment. So you can respond and say, I want to be in this or that group. The next meeting under this initiative shall be at the beginning of October, because the Bureau is going to have to identify and approve the task groups, which are going to be formed, and they would formally create the task groups, and that should include an itinerary with a calendar, as well as the task group's objectives. It's not that we're going to come here and blah, 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 do nothing. We're going to have very clear objectives in order to render reports reports which shall be in support of the recommendations that will be given to the Bureau for them to be able to create their own planning guidelines in order for the utility to submit their plan. Yeah, I did want to comment because the fact is that, personally speaking, at least myself, have always been very committed. We, as employees of the Electric Power Authority, not just as employees, but at least in my personal case, I feel it in my heart. So a time may come where, given the Electric Power Authority situation, and I bring this because I think there's something that should be considered. Currently, there's some major constraints in terms of the Electric Power Authorities in its role. If it continues to lose resources, or this difficulty that it's suffering in regards to being able to reach what it needs to implement the various things, I quote, how could we manage that continuity factor? Let's suppose that you continue to lose your key personnel for whatever reason. How can we guarantee continuity to this effort? In terms of, continuity, because that's not the sole element at the table. There are other things here that go way beyond continuity. For example, that the government administrations in turn decide, let's do this other thing. So how can we definitely achieve continuity? And in this sense, focused on the Electric Power Authority, because if the situation continues to lose its resources, given experience, expertise, and capacities, and for whatever reasons continues to bleed out its resources, it's just a little food for thought, because honestly, it's a situation that's truly underway, you see. Thank you. Yes, definitely true. Just a comment. I don't know if it changes the proceedings in terms of the concession of T&D. Does that affect our proceedings? My understanding is that these proceedings go beyond, above. Our planning goes beyond the operational issue that's happening down here, you see? But I only bring it as a point of thought to consider, because it's supposed to be that by the end of the year, all of that is supposedly done. So the Bureau creates regulations for everyone. It's a T&D operator. If any name changes, the rules don't change. So the regulations are being made so that everyone, it applies to everyone. So, like I said, please make sure to leave us with your email. Any further questions? Please, by all means, go ahead. This is a question more for intellectual curiosity's sake. I think at some point I heard that someone said that Puerto Rico's energy consumption has gone down, but I don't know where they're getting that data. Is it the Electric Power Authorities? Because the Electric Power Authority may have lost some consumption, but does anyone have an idea of what's actually being generated by individual PV systems, be they residential or commercial? Because I'm under the impression that maybe the Electric Power Authority's numbers are lower, but I don't think that the numbers are low for the entire country. That's a concern that I'm, kind of bothered by, because I think that the article where I read it was published by economists, because the electricity production is possibly incorrect in those numbers from the authority alone. We've got some experts around. Individual generation, I'm sorry, I should probably use a microphone. I don't have all the information, people, but what I can mention is that we have noted that peak demand for the system has reduced in the last years. Now, I don't have the actual number, but I can tell you that at least our peak, I believe, was in 2006 or 2005 or 2006. And I think it was what? 3,000 plus megawatts. I believe that we're now below 2,800 at peak demand. Okay, and from my recollection, peak demand would be at night, and in the evening, photovoltaic systems don't produce energy. So we can at least, using that as a frame of reference, we have noted that peak demand has gone down from 2005 onwards, certainly. I think we were about 3,500 megawatts in peak demand, and now we're about 2,800, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So at least in terms of peak demand, I can tell you that there's certainly been a reduction. Yeah. I'm not sure if you heard me already, but I'll use it again. I'll say it again into the mic. Not the internet. Well, if demand has gone down, so has load then. And we do have the data. It's on the internet. Yeah. Finding it is difficult, certainly. We already had that discussion with the commissioner, but we'll find a way to improve on that. So, one of the things that the Bureau is pursuing in its multiple efforts includes to try to collect all the information regarding all energy sources and to put it in some kind of format. In addition to what the Electric Power Authority has on its webpage, we would prepare statistics that average consumers are able to understand in a simple language, etc., and that they be available for us to also quantify precisely what's out there on the streets. Because the situation is real, that there's people who have interconnected without notifying the authority at all. With the hope that most of them have installed things correctly and that they don't suffer harm themselves or their system, because the reality is that something that's improperly installed could cause someone's loss of life, be it at the Electric Power Authority or whomever connected their system. So one of the things that we're thinking, and that most probably is going to happen, is that the portal through which interconnection processes are run, we have some way of receiving periodic data, basically almost in real time, as who is applying, what's being interconnected, in such a way that data can be available and be provided to everyone. For all types of purposes, because that could serve for so many purposes, even for institutions to lift funds, fundraising. And very probably that portal is going to be required to be created in order to run its own statistics. No one is going to have to sit down and run a monthly report. The portal should be able to self-report electronically. All the forms be electronic, and that it registers statistics in automated fashion, so that in fact that takes the onus off the shoulders of the Electric Power Authority's personnel, so that the system can spit out daily reports if needed, or monthly. And we're working on that because we know how important that is. My name is Lisa Speakers. I'm a licensed electrician, and I have various Facebook page with other groups. And you've just said something that I'm highly concerned about, and I see it constantly, which is the amount of people who are installing systems themselves, and the concerns that they post on their Facebook chats. Oh, I bought an inverter. I'm putting it up myself. How do I connect it? You name it. Oh, I bought this and that battery. I bought this other and this other. It's a reality. But since it's not on our agenda for discussion today, but it's a reality. Yeah, right now we have interconnection proceedings that's looking into those needs as well. Definitely true. Yeah. So now, what we're going to do, be sure to leave us with your email address, and we would like to offer you our most sincere and much thanks to Joe Palladino and his group. Yep. Oh yeah, most definitely. And Tom, Patricia, Samir, truly, you've really worked very hard. I can tell you, indeed, you've worked very hard. They're highly committed to our island. And Paul G. Martini, who will be somewhere around, and Brenda Malero. Look, I'll tell you something. This system through which Paul spoke, that was Gerardo Santiago, who did a great jury rig, and it worked quite well. So we thank him, and we also thank Engineer Caron, as well as, of course, the commissioners. Seguramente estoy 3 minutos tarde con esto, pero, de hecho, me parece que es un informe cuyos datos son ventas de electricidad de Puerto Rico, mermaron por 18% desde el 2008, comenzando en 2007 al 2017, habla de una merma en población y Producto Nacional Bruto, que es lo que impulsa todo ello. Yo sé que es tarde, mala mía, me tomó un minuto buscarlo. Gracias por compartir. Sí, pero fue muy difícil encontrarlo, sí, fui directamente a otro informe. Comentarios alejados del micrófono no pueden ser escuchados por intérpretes, son interpretados. Se están haciendo comentarios alejados del micrófono, por lo tanto no serán escuchados para hacer traducción. La respuesta es fantástica, lo compartiremos con el grupo. We are creating a formal way through which you can give us your insight. Just a comment, and forgive me, I'm late too, regarding demand and the discussion. The Electric Power Authority, nevertheless, by using it as backup, you always have to remember the Electric Power Authority has to have available, has to generate for when customers may need to use their Electric Power Authority services and have it available. So the fact that there's that a certain amount of power isn't being consumed doesn't mean that the Electric Power Authority can certainly save it and not produce it or not have it available to produce. So you have to remember always that fact. And that could be part of the rules of operation or operation codes. There may be a permutation where currently the regulation has been drafted because there's a law which states that the Electric Power Authority is the provider of last resort. But perhaps we can argue that, all right, fine, you're going to self-supply, you're going to self-consume, okay, great. Well, the Electric Power Authority or the T&D operator, whomever, will be here only to safeguard a percentage of what you need. That's a permutation that's being discussed in other jurisdictions, and that makes a bit of a dent. Otherwise, it's going to have to continue having that capacity the whole time, no matter what they're doing, right? Demand goes down, consumption goes down, and now I don't have any microphone open to continue to hear. So. Again, comments are being made away from the microphone. I can't hear them. Thank you very much for all the information. There's a comment sheet. If you'd be so kind to fill out your evaluations, we would thank you very much for that. I'll now allow a word to Commissioner Mateo to end the activity officially. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for your participation. I believe that once again, we had a very productive workshop, so we count on your continued participation, and that amongst the work groups, there also be beneficial insight and the task groups. In addition to those who are here, the Bureau is going to try to invite other groups that may not have been here today, but were at other workshops that could also provide information. So we will soon publish our resolution that establishes the groups and to notify the calendar to continue the efforts. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you. Papi, yo no me puedo quedarte con la nena pilla en la escuela. Me tengo que ir corriendo. Ah, a las 5 supone que la recojo, a las 5 y 5. No acaba. Ah, sí, se acabó ahora. Okay. Nuestras disculpas a nuestros oyentes en el ciberespacio por nuestros comentarios personales.
por la oficina. Mañana va. Mañana va. Sábado, otro día blanco.
Está bien.
Lo más terrero. Lo más que joder. A ver si cuando termine aquí, está la puerta abierta aunque sea para salir de aquí.
Siento que no me puedo quedar ayudarte, hermano.
Dale.